The integrated principles of science. Mystriks are striving to do something simple and ambitious at the same time. Build a way of thinking that actually earns our beliefs. The integrated principles of science is that toolkit. Across 6 parts, we'll stitch together the habits that keep us honest, how we test ideas, how we reason about them, how we judge evidence, how we avoid bad arguments, and how we sharpen our concepts so they don't wobble when reality pushes back. This isn't theory for theory's sake. It's a working method for getting from looks true to holds up. We'll start with the scientific method, then bring in critical thinking, rules of evidence that we call ROVRRTELF, ROVRRTELF, blended modes of reasoning, abduction, deduction, induction, analytical philosophy, and common logical fallacies. Each part stands alone, but together they form a practical discipline: minimize bias, maximize clarity, and let the world correct you when you're wrong. That's intellectual honesty in action, and the point of the whole journey. The Integrated Principles of Science, Part 1 of 6, The Scientific Method. In our quest to understand reality and seek the most accurate approximation of truth, we must rely on a system that is both rigorous and intellectually honest. This approach integrates 4 key components: the scientific method, critical thinking, integrated modes of reasoning, analytical philosophy, and rules of evidence. Each of these plays a crucial role in navigating the complexities of our world, ensuring that our conclusions are based on evidence, logic, and thoughtful analysis. In this 4-part exploration, we will examine each component in detail, beginning with the foundation of all empirical inquiry, the scientific method. The scientific method serves as the cornerstone of our system for discovering truth. Grounded in observation, experimentation, and data analysis, it provides a structured way to explore the world, test hypotheses, and draw conclusions based on evidence. It is the most reliable and objective tool for uncovering how the universe operates. Let's dive into how this method works and why it is fundamental to intellectual honesty. While the scientific method remains the best tool for understanding the natural world, it's important to recognize its limitations in areas where human experiences are deeply personal or value-laden. For example, concepts of beauty or other subjective judgments are not easily reduced to measurable data. Philosophical ethics or artistic interpretation may be more appropriate in such situations. The value of the scientific method lies in its ability to tackle questions about objective reality, but it works best in tandem with other approaches when dealing with human subjectivity. It involves several key steps. 1. Observation. Gather data about phenomena. For example, observing that certain plants grow faster in sunlight than in shade helps identify natural patterns that warrant further investigation. Observation is the foundation upon which scientific inquiry is built. 2. Question. Formulate a question based on observations. For example, does sunlight directly affect plant growth rates? Ensures the investigation has a clear focus. Asking the right questions guides the direction of research and helps define what we are trying to understand. 3. Hypothesis. Propose a tentative explanation or prediction that can be tested. For example, if plants receive more sunlight, they will grow faster. Provides a testable idea that can be explored through experimentation. A reasonable hypothesis is specific and falsifiable, meaning it can be proven wrong by evidence. 4. Experimentation. Conduct controlled experiments to test the hypothesis. For example, placing identical plants in different lighting conditions allows researchers to isolate the variable sunlight and observe its direct effect. Controlling variables ensures that other factors do not influence the results. 5. Analysis. Analyze the data to determine if they support or refute the hypothesis. For example, measuring plant growth over time shows whether plants grow faster in sunlight. Careful data analysis helps reveal patterns and assess whether the hypothesis holds under scrutiny. 6. Conclusion. Draw conclusions based on the data and analysis. For example, sunlight appears to accelerate plant growth, suggesting it is a key factor in plant development. Conclusions help refine our understanding of how the world works. 7. Peer review. Submitting findings for review by other experts in the field ensures the research is scrutinized for errors or biases. Peer review adds credibility to the findings by having them evaluated by others with expertise in the subject. 8. Replication. Repeating experiments to verify results is crucial to ensure the findings are not just a one-off occurrence. Replication strengthens the reliability of the conclusions by showing that they hold across different trials and conditions. This method emphasizes empiricism, relying on observable, measurable evidence, and falsifiability, the ability to disprove theories with evidence. This approach is highly effective for building reliable knowledge, such as confirming sunlight's effect on plant growth. Each step leads to a clearer understanding of the natural world. By following the scientific method, we engage in a disciplined process of inquiry that leads to more reliable conclusions. This approach is highly effective for building reliable knowledge, such as confirming sunlight's effect on plant growth. From observation to peer review, each step is designed to minimize bias and maximize objectivity. This structured approach lays the groundwork for building a deeper understanding of reality, which will be further strengthened by applying critical thinking, the next essential component of our framework. The Integrated Principles of Science, Part 2 of 6, Critical Thinking. While the scientific method provides a systematic approach to empirical inquiry, critical thinking allows us to evaluate the quality of arguments, evidence, and conclusions. Through logical reasoning, skepticism, and open-mindedness, critical thinking ensures we approach each question with intellectual honesty. Let's now explore how critical thinking operates as a powerful tool for refining our understanding of the world. Critical thinking is the application of reasoning to evaluate arguments, claims, and evidence. It involves 1. Skepticism, not accepting assertions without evidence. For example, asking, could other factors like water or soil also affect plant growth, encourages a deeper inquiry into whether the conclusion is genuinely justified. Skepticism helps prevent jumping to conclusions without considering alternative explanations. 2. Analysis, breaking down arguments into their constituent parts to assess their validity. For example, examining the role of sunlight, water, and soil separately in plant growth allows a precise evaluation of each factor's contribution. This analytical approach ensures that complex problems are tackled methodically and in a structured way. 3. Logic, using logical reasoning to assess the coherence and consistency of arguments. For example, confirming that the experiment controls for all variables except sunlight ensures the conclusion is based on solid reasoning rather than accidental correlations. Logic prevents the acceptance of conclusions that don't follow from the premises. 4. Open-mindedness, being willing to revise or abandon beliefs in light of new evidence or better arguments. For example, adjusting the original belief about sunlight's effect if new evidence suggests temperature also plays a role in demonstrating intellectual flexibility. Open-mindedness is key to refining knowledge as new insights emerge. Critical thinking is more demanding than it appears at first glance. It involves not only analyzing arguments, but also navigating personal biases, cognitive shortcuts, and emotional influences that can distort judgment. Skills such as recognizing confirmation bias and understanding the Dunning-Kruger effect are vital for refining one's thought process. Developing true critical thinking requires continuous practice and self-reflection, making it a lifelong learning process rather than a simple tool. Critical thinking helps ensure our judgments are based on sound reasoning and evidence. By remaining skeptical, yet open-minded, and consistently seeking clarity and coherence in our thinking, we strengthen our ability to evaluate complex factors such as plant growth. By combining critical thinking with the scientific method, we now have a robust foundation for deeper inquiry, which we'll explore further through integrated modes of reasoning. The Integrated Principles of Science, Part 3 of 6, Rules of Evidence. ROVRRTELF, ROVRRTELF. Reliable, objective, verified, reproducible, relevant, trustworthy, empirical, logical, and falsifiable. In Mystrikism, evidence isn't just a suggestion, it's the foundation of everything we believe. Without solid evidence, beliefs become unmoored, floating in the dangerous waters of assumption, bias, and wishful thinking. That's why Mystriks use a careful, structured approach to evaluating claims. ROVRRTELF, ROVRRTELF evidence. Each letter represents a crucial principle, ensuring we rely only on the most scientifically sound information. R for reliable. Reliable evidence comes from a dependable source with a proven track record of accuracy, transparency, and success in its domain. Such reliability can be built over time, as with a career scientist with decades of reputable research, or through consistent, high-quality results, as with a car mechanic who has fixed countless vehicles without issue. When a source is reliable, the chance of it presenting flawed or deceptive information is significantly lower. This doesn't mean we blindly trust anyone. Even reliable sources can make mistakes. But if you have to decide between trusting a seasoned expert with peer-reviewed publications versus a random internet comment, the expert's reliability speaks volumes. Example. Imagine you're reading an article about the effectiveness of a new medication. If that article cites data from a respected medical journal that's known for rigorous peer review standards, the evidence is more likely to be reliable. In contrast, an anonymous blog post making the same claim without any references might raise skepticism. O for objective. Objective evidence is gathered and presented without personal bias, emotional influence, or hidden motives. Pure objectivity is almost impossible in practice, since human beings inherently carry biases, but the goal is to minimize or eliminate them as much as possible. Bias can dramatically skew the interpretation of data and lead to conclusions that reflect wishes or preconceptions rather than facts. Confirmation bias is a classic example. People often seek evidence that supports their pre-existing opinions while dismissing conflicting data. Objective methodologies, like double-blind experiments, help reduce these pitfalls. Example: imagine a research project comparing the health effects of sugary drinks versus water. If the soda company funds the study and designs the experiment, there's a risk of bias in how they collect or interpret results. An independent university team using controlled, peer-reviewed methods and no financial ties to the beverage industry is far more likely to produce objective findings. V for verified. Verification is the process of having evidence confirmed or replicated by others, ideally by multiple independent sources. This can involve peer review in academic settings, cross-checking data, or replicating experiments. If only one person or lab makes a claim and nobody else can confirm it, the reliability of that claim is up for debate. Even highly skilled experts sometimes make errors, and external verification is how the scientific community corrects course if something is off. Example: a single astronomer announcing they found a new dwarf planet is intriguing, but it's not accepted as fact until other observatories confirm the object's existence. Once multiple independent teams verify the discovery, it transitions from interesting claim to accepted reality. R for reproducible. Reproducibility focuses on whether an experiment or observation can be repeated under the same conditions and yield similar results. It's closely tied to verification, but specifically zeroes in on replicating the same outcome multiple times. Any single study could be a fluke, influenced by unrecognized variables or even just random chance. Reproducibility ensures that the findings aren't a one-time anomaly. For scientific theories or claims to hold weight, multiple researchers in different labs or locations should be able to achieve the same outcomes. Example: if a researcher claims a certain supplement drastically improves memory, the next step is for other scientists to run their own experiments with the same protocols. If those subsequent studies achieve consistent results, the claim gains credibility. If they fail, the original study might be flawed or the effect might be due to chance. R for relevant. Evidence must directly address the claim at hand. It should be tightly connected to the specific question you're trying to answer or the hypothesis under scrutiny. Irrelevant evidence can muddy discussions and confuse people into accepting or rejecting claims for the wrong reasons. It's tempting, and unfortunately common, to present impressive-sounding stats or facts that aren't actually pertinent simply because they're dramatic. Example: someone arguing that X herbal tea cures depression might point out that the tea tastes good or helps soothe a sore throat. While those are interesting observations, they don't back up the cure claim. Those facts might be true, but they are irrelevant to the specific assertion about depression. T for trustworthy. Trustworthy evidence comes from a source or process that's transparent about its methodologies, potential conflicts of interest, and underlying data. It's the clarity of how the evidence was gathered, analyzed, and presented that boosts or diminishes trust. Trust is built through transparency and consistency. If the methods used to gather the evidence are kept secret or the data is never shared, it's much harder to assess whether the evidence holds up. That lack of openness should raise red flags and warrant extra scrutiny. Example: a public health agency publishes all its data, explains how it ran clinical trials and details who funded the research. This transparency allows other scientists to review, critique, or replicate the work, making the results more trustworthy. Meanwhile, a private lab that refuses to release raw data or methods is inviting suspicion. E for empirical. Empirical evidence is based on observable, measurable data or on logical reasoning that directly ties to observable phenomena. In other words, it's grounded in the physical, natural world, or in sound, demonstrable logic. When claims are purely speculative and have no measurable or testable component, they slip into the realm of conjecture or faith. Empirical evidence allows for concrete testing, and hypotheses can be supported or disproven through tangible data and observation. Example: if someone claims a new species of butterfly exists, they should be able to show physical specimens, photographs, or DNA evidence. If no observable or measurable proof is offered, the claim remains unconfirmed, no matter how sincerely it's stated. L for logical. Logical consistency means that the evidence or argument aligns with established facts and does not contradict itself. It should flow coherently, and its conclusions should follow naturally from its premises. Even if you have data, the interpretation of that data must be rational. A set of numbers can be misinterpreted through faulty reasoning, leading to illogical or contradictory conclusions. Logical reasoning also acts as a filter. If a new claim contradicts many well-established facts without presenting robust evidence, we should be skeptical. Example: if someone claims all swans are white, yet we find even one black swan, the logic behind all swans are white unravels. In scientific terms, if a new idea conflicts with well-understood natural laws, it must bring strong, logically coherent evidence to justify rethinking those laws. F for falsifiable. A claim is falsifiable if there's a way to conceive of evidence or an experiment that could show the claim is wrong. This doesn't mean the claim is false. just that it must be structured in a way that could be disproven, if indeed it were incorrect. Falsifiability is at the very core of what separates scientific claims from non-scientific or faith-based ones. If no possible evidence can disprove a claim, it's outside the scope of scientific scrutiny, essentially existing as an untouchable assumption rather than a testable hypothesis. Example: greenhouse gases contribute to climate change is falsifiable because scientists can measure global temperatures and atmospheric composition and run models to see whether reducing greenhouse gases changes climate trends. On the other hand, if someone says an invisible, undetectable fairy controls the weather, we have no way to prove or disprove it scientifically. ROVRRTELF isn't just a fancy acronym. It's a safeguard against deception, bias, and misinformation. Mystrikism holds that the pursuit of truth is an ethical responsibility, and that means using the most meticulous tools available to separate fact from fiction. In a world where falsehoods spread like wildfire, the mystical commitment to honest inquiry is more important than ever. So the next time you encounter a bold claim, put it to the test. Is it reliable, objective, verified, reproducible, relevant, trustworthy, empirical, logical, and falsifiable? If not, then it's not worthy of belief. The Integrated Principles of Science, Part 4 of 6. Blended Modes of Reasoning. To truly understand the world's complexities, it is essential to integrate multiple modes of reasoning: abductive, deductive, and inductive. Each offers a unique perspective, and when combined, they create a comprehensive approach to evaluating evidence and developing knowledge. This section will demonstrate how these modes work together to improve the accuracy of our understanding. Abductive reasoning begins with forming a hypothesis based on incomplete or limited evidence. It involves making an educated guess about the most likely explanation for an observed phenomenon. Although abductive reasoning provides a starting point, it is inherently uncertain and is a tentative basis for further investigation. This form of reasoning is crucial in the early stages of inquiry, offering a creative yet cautious approach to problem solving. Inductive reasoning completes the process by gathering empirical data and using specific observations to make broader generalizations. Induction evaluates whether the results align with the predictions made through deduction. It allows for adapting the hypothesis based on real-world evidence, but carries the risk of drawing inaccurate conclusions when based on limited data. Deductive reasoning applies general principles or known truths to specific situations, allowing for conclusions to be drawn with logical certainty, assuming the premises are valid. Deduction tests the hypothesis generated through abduction by predicting what should occur if the hypothesis is correct. While powerful, deductive reasoning is only as reliable as the premises it begins with, making accuracy in the initial assumptions essential. It's important to recognize that each mode of reasoning comes with its own strengths and weaknesses. Abductive reasoning, for instance, provides hypotheses based on limited data, meaning the conclusions can sometimes be more of an educated guess than a certainty. Deductive reasoning relies on the accuracy of its premises, and inductive reasoning can be swayed by incomplete observations. These methods don't guarantee the truth, but their value lies in how they work together. Abduction generates hypotheses, deduction tests them, and induction allows us to adjust based on evidence. This layered approach improves the reliability of conclusions, even though no single method is flawless. By integrating abductive, deductive, and inductive reasoning, we can approach problems from multiple angles, leading to more well-rounded conclusions. This synthesis of reasoning modes complements the empirical rigor of the scientific method and the intellectual discipline of critical thinking, ensuring that our quest for truth is grounded in both logic and evidence. Next, we will turn to analytical philosophy, which sharpens our conceptual tools for making sense of these investigations. The Integrated Principles of Science, Part 5 of 6. Analytical Philosophy. Analytical philosophy contributes precision, clarity, and rigorous logic to our system of inquiry. Focusing on language, concepts, and argument structure helps us refine our understanding of complex issues. In this final section, we will explore how analytical philosophy complements the scientific method, critical thinking, and integrated modes of reasoning to create the most effective framework for discovering truth. Analytical philosophy emphasizes clarity, accuracy, and rational analysis in examining philosophical issues. It contributes to this system by 1. Conceptual analysis. Clarifying the meanings of concepts and ensuring arguments are built on clearly defined terms is essential for avoiding ambiguity and misinterpretation. For instance, when discussing plant growth, it is important to specify whether this refers to height, biomass, leaf area, or some other measurable attribute. Without this clarity, researchers or readers might draw different conclusions based on their assumptions, leading to inconsistencies. Clear and precise definitions prevent confusion when interpreting results and provide a foundation for meaningful comparisons and replication in future studies. In any investigation, these well-defined terms serve as the bedrock for maintaining consistency, accuracy, and a shared understanding across different disciplines or stakeholders. 2. Philosophical logic. Applying formal logic ensures that reasoning is valid and conclusions are sound. For example, when evaluating the statement, "sunlight causes plants to grow faster," it is essential to assess whether the evidence presented truly supports this claim. This might involve scrutinizing the study's methodology, verifying the data's reliability, and identifying any logical fallacies, such as assuming causation from mere correlation. Logical analysis also involves examining whether alternative explanations have been ruled out, and whether the argument adheres to principles of deductive or inductive reasoning. By rigorously testing the structure and validity of arguments, philosophical logic minimizes the risk of drawing flawed conclusions based on incomplete or misleading reasoning. 3. Epistemology. Studying the nature of knowledge, belief, and justification provides a framework for understanding how we come to know something. For instance, claiming that sunlight causes plants to grow faster requires a deep examination of the evidence and the processes used to gather it. This includes evaluating whether the experimental design, data collection, and analysis methods are robust, reproducible, and bias-free. Epistemology goes beyond merely accepting results at face value. It challenges us to consider whether our beliefs are well-founded and justified. By interrogating the reliability of evidence and the validity of the methods used to obtain it, epistemology ensures that our knowledge claims rest on a solid, credible foundation, promoting scientific integrity and intellectual rigor. Analytical philosophy brings clarity and rigor to our understanding of complex concepts, ensuring our arguments are logically coherent and well-defined, such as how we define and measure plant growth. Together with the scientific method, critical thinking, and integrated modes of reasoning, it completes our comprehensive system for determining the best approximation of truth. Through this multifaceted approach, we are better equipped to explore the mysteries of reality and continue our pursuit of knowledge with intellectual honesty and open-mindedness. The Integrated Principles of Science, Part 6 of 6, Logical Fallacies. Analytical philosophy plays a vital role in sharpening our ability to spot flawed reasoning, particularly through its emphasis on identifying logical fallacies. Everyday arguments often fall victim to common errors, such as ad hominem attacks, in which someone attacks the person rather than the argument, and false dilemmas, which present only two options when more may exist. Recognizing these fallacies is essential for navigating complex discussions and seeking truth, as they can derail honest inquiry by distracting from the actual issues. By equipping ourselves with the tools to detect such fallacies, we can keep conversations focused on evidence and logical coherence, making analytical philosophy highly practical in real-world interactions. This focus on clarity, logic, and the avoidance of common fallacies complements the broader search for truth. Logical fallacies are common errors in reasoning that weaken arguments and distract from the core issues. Recognizing them is key to maintaining clear, rational discussions. While there are many fallacies, here are a few common ones to watch for. 1. Ad hominem, personal attack. Explanation. This fallacy attacks the character, motives, or other personal traits of the individual, making an argument instead of addressing the argument itself. It aims to discredit the person rather than engage with their reasoning. Exception. If the person's character is directly relevant to the argument, for example, their honesty in a testimony, such attacks may be valid. Other names. Against the man, genetic fallacy, in cases attacking origins. 2. Straw man, explanation. This involves distorting, oversimplifying, or misrepresenting an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. It diverts the discussion away from the actual point being debated. Exception. None. Clarity and fidelity to the original argument are always required. Other names. Misrepresentation fallacy. 3. False dilemma, false dichotomy. Explanation. This fallacy presents only two options or outcomes as the only possibilities, ignoring other potential alternatives. It frames the debate in black and white terms. Exception. If the options truly are binary, for example, you either passed or failed, the dichotomy may be valid. Other names. Either or fallacy, bifurcation fallacy. 4. Slippery slope. Explanation. This argues that allowing one action or idea will inevitably lead to extreme, undesirable consequences without sufficient evidence. It exaggerates the potential impact. Exception. If there is credible evidence showing a clear causal chain, this may not be fallacious. Other names. Domino effect fallacy. 5. Appeal to emotion. Explanation. This manipulates people's emotions, such as fear, pity, or anger, rather than using logical reasoning or evidence. It appeals to feelings rather than facts. Exception. Emotional appeals may complement rational arguments in persuasive rhetoric, but shouldn't replace logic. Other names. Emotional appeal, argumentum ad passionis. 6. False cause, post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Explanation. This assumes that because one event follows another, the first event caused the second. Correlation is mistaken for causation. Exception. If a strong, demonstrable causal link exists, it's not fallacious. Other names. Post hoc fallacy, causal fallacy. 7. Begging the question, circular reasoning. Explanation. This fallacy occurs when the argument's conclusion is assumed in its premise, offering no independent support for the claim. It often restates the claim in different words. Exception. None. Arguments must provide new, supporting evidence. Other names. Petitio principii. 8. Hasty generalization. Explanation. Drawing a sweeping conclusion based on insufficient or unrepresentative evidence. It often involves jumping to conclusions without adequate justification. Exception. Quick generalizations might be necessary in emergencies, though they remain logically weak. Other names. Overgeneralization. 9. Red herring. Explanation. Introducing irrelevant information into an argument to distract from the actual issue. It misdirects attention away from the point being debated. Exception. None. Staying on topic is crucial to sound argumentation. Other names. Distraction fallacy. 10. Bandwagon appeal. Appeal to popularity. Explanation. This asserts that something is true, good, or desirable because it's widely believed or practiced. It substitutes popularity for validity. Exception. In matters of subjective preference, for example, popular music, consensus might be relevant. Other names. Argumentum ad populum. 11th appeal to authority. Explanation. This claims something is true simply because an authority figure endorses it without examining the actual evidence. It defers to authority instead of logic. Exception. If the authority is an expert in the relevant field and consensus exists, reliance may be justified. Other names. Argument from authority. Ad verecundiam. 12. Equivocation. Explanation. This uses ambiguous language or switches the meaning of a word or phrase during an argument to mislead or confuse. Exception. None. Precision and consistency in terms are essential. Other names. Ambiguity fallacy. 13th composition fallacy. Explanation. Assuming that what is true for the parts must be true for the whole. For example, every player on the team is talented, so the team must be unbeatable. Exception. When the properties of the parts necessarily affect the whole, for example, physical composition. Other names. Part-to-whole fallacy. 14th division fallacy. Explanation. Assuming that what is true for the whole must be true for its parts. For example, the team is excellent, so each player must be outstanding. Exception. When properties of the whole inherently define the parts, for example, chemical properties. Other names. Whole-to-part fallacy. 15th appeal to ignorance. Explanation. Arguing that a claim is true because it hasn't been proven false, or vice versa. It unfairly shifts the burden of proof. Exception. In certain cases, such as legal reasoning, a lack of evidence might reasonably imply innocence. Other names. Argumentum ad ignorantium. 16. No true Scotsman. Explanation. Arbitrarily redefining criteria to dismiss counterexamples and protect a universal claim. For example, no true Scotsman would drink tea instead of whiskey. Exception. If the redefinition clarifies genuinely misunderstood criteria. 17. Tu quoque. You too. Explanation. Dismissing someone's argument by accusing them of hypocrisy. It evades the argument by focusing on the person's actions rather than the argument itself. Exception. In some ethical debates, consistency might matter. Other names. Appeal to hypocrisy. 18. Argument from consequences. Explanation. Asserting that something must be true or false based on its desirable or undesirable consequences. It confuses factuality with moral or practical outcomes. Exception. Consequences are relevant in ethical or policy discussions, but don't establish truth. Other names. Appeal to consequences. 19. False analogy. Explanation. Drawing a comparison between two things that aren't sufficiently alike to support the argument. It overextends similarities. Exception. Analogies meant as illustrative rather than probative may be permissible. Other names. Faulty analogy. 20. Gambler's fallacy. Explanation. Believing that past random events influence future random events. For example, after 10 coin flips of heads, tails must be next. Exception. None. Probability doesn't work this way. Other names. Monte Carlo fallacy. 21st. Fallacy of accident. Hasty application of a general rule. Explanation. Applying a general rule to a specific case where it does not apply due to special circumstances. For example, cutting people with knives is wrong, so surgeons are unethical. Exception. None. Proper contextual understanding is always required. Other names. Sweeping generalization. Dicto simpliciter. 22nd fallacy of the undistributed middle. Explanation. Failing to connect two premises properly in a syllogism. For example, all cats are mammals. All dogs are mammals. Therefore, all cats are dogs. Exception. None. Proper syllogistic structure is essential. 23rd appeal to tradition. Explanation. arguing that something is right or better simply because it has been done or believed for a long time. For example, this is how we've always done it. Exception. If tradition embodies tested wisdom, it may have practical relevance, though it still requires independent justification. Other names: argumentum ad antiquitatem. 24th appeal to novelty. Explanation. Claiming something is superior simply because it is new or modern. For example, this technology must be better because it's the latest version. Exception. None. Innovation still requires evidence of merit. Other names: argumentum ad novitatem. 25th, middle ground fallacy. Explanation. Assuming that the middle point between two extremes is the correct or reasonable position, regardless of evidence. For example, one side says vaccines are dangerous, the other says they're safe. The truth must be somewhere in the middle. Exception. None. Truth isn't necessarily equidistant. Other names: false compromise. 26th, appeal to probability. Explanation. Assuming that because something could happen, it will inevitably happen. For example, a meteor could hit Earth, so we're doomed. Exception. In certain predictive models, for example, actuarial science, probability may warrant action, but doesn't confirm inevitability. 27. Continuum fallacy. Explanation. Rejecting a claim because it lacks a clear or precise boundary. For example, there's no exact moment when a heap of sand becomes a heap, so heap is meaningless. Exception. Vagueness doesn't invalidate legitimate concepts in all contexts. Other names: Sorite's fallacy, line drawing fallacy. 28. False equivalence. Explanation. Assuming two things are morally or logically equivalent when they are not. For example, killing in self-defense is just as bad as murder. Exception. None. Equivalency must be demonstrated, not assumed. Other names: false balance. 29th, appeal to force. Explanation. Using threats or intimidation to support an argument instead of evidence or reasoning. For example, agree with me or you'll regret it. Exception. None. Coercion undermines rational discourse. Other names: argumentum ad baculum. 30. False attribution. Explanation. Citing an authority or source that is misquoted, taken out of context, or unrelated to the topic. For example, Einstein believed in astrology, so it must be valid. Exception. If properly contextualized, relevant attributions may be legitimate. Final thoughts. If a claim survives contact with this toolkit, clear concepts, sound logic, disciplined reasoning, sturdy evidence, reproducible tests, and fallacy spotting, it hasn't just won an argument. It has earned provisional trust. Provisional matters. We stay open to better data, stronger explanations, and fair criticism. That's how knowledge grows without turning into dogma. Keep the kit close. Use it on big questions and small ones: policy, medicine, media, everyday decisions. Integrate it with your values, and if you're listening to this in a Mystrikism context, pair it with your sense of awe, your natural spirituality. So truth and meaning don't have to live in separate rooms. The natural next step: apply, iterate, improve.